Hello, Mike here. Today I'm going to be making a tapered hexagon table pedestal. So what I've done is I've made this jig. It's a simple jig, but it does its purpose, and that is to line up the angles. So what I want to end up with is a piece that is tapered 60 degrees here, taper from 2" to 3" here, and 4.4 degree angle on both ends. That way it'll stand up and be correct horizontally and vertically. So this jig I made with 2 settings. I've got hole number 1 for 1 angle and hole number 2 for 2 angles. I put a carriage bolt through, countersunk in the back, and the fence goes on to the jig and gets clamped down in place, and that makes the proper angles for the cuts. So I've already milled my wood 3/4 of an inch thick, 4 1/4 inch wide, and 27 inch, a little bit long, so I can cut them on my chop saw to length. So now I've got to set my blade to 60 degrees on my table saw and my blade to 4.4 degrees on the chop saw. Here's a little test piece I made to check my angles to be sure I'm at 60 degrees. They're all coming together nicely, so this would be essentially the top of the pedestal. So I just made this and glued it up just to check the angles and be sure they're all right. What I'm going to do here is, this is a piece of the tapered pedestal leg I'm going to make. I've cut the angle this way already. I've got my jig set for 26 inches, which is what I want the pedestal leg to be. I'm going to cut the leg, the other angle, for the 4.4 degree angle. Ready to use. Both angles are at the same, going the same way, which is what I want them to go the same way. And they're ready to now be put onto the jig and cut the angles. Alright, now I'm ready to take my board, which I've got for the leg for the pedestal. I've marked it top, bottom, and in for the way it's going to be oriented. I marked all 6 boards the same. I've also marked the top on number 1 on my jig, so I'm going to set this in here. I've got my table saw blade set for exactly 60 degrees. I've set my fence to be exactly this width, which I have previously cut to a 60 degree angle. So now when I run it through, I'll end up with the top and the correct angle and taper. So I'm ready to make the first cut. Here's the first angle, cut at 60 degrees, tapered nicely. And now I'll do the other 6 boards and be ready to do the second angle, which I'll set up on the jig. Alright, now I've got my boards all cut to angle number 1. Now I took my jig and I changed the orientation of the screws to the bolts to number 2, each hole number 2, and I'm going to orientate the board opposite of what I did, so the bottom is down here and top is up here. Now when I run it through, I'll get the opposite angle tapered to just the right dimensions. So I'm ready to cut the second angle. There's my piece, angled 60 degrees, 2-inch taper top to bottom, 25 3/4 inch long, and 4.4 inch angle on both ends. So I'll say that again. Here's my piece that's done, 60-degree angle, tapered 2 inches from the top to bottom, 4.4-degree angles on both ends. That way when it stands up, it'll be oriented all square. It's got a nice taper to it, but the top and bottom are square. I've done a few things in preparation for this. One is I had a couple boards that had knots in them and a split, and I filled them with epoxy, and I just added some dye to the epoxy to make them look a little more interesting in the piece. So there's a crack there that's been split, and then this knot has been split. And what it ends up doing is it ends up with nice dark lines in the piece, but they're solid, so it makes it look really nice. The other thing I did is I went through SketchUp and drew up all of my pieces on SketchUp. So I knew angles, I knew dimensions, the top plate, I've got the angles, the dimensions, and the bottom plate, I did the same thing with the bottom plate. I'm going to put a metal brace on the top of the table. I've got that drawn up. I'm going to have somebody make that for me. Here's the top plate, actual size. I did angles for the 4.1 degrees and angles for the 60 degrees. So I got it all documented. The other thing I did is I made a full size scale drawing right there. It's kind of hard to see, but it's got all the dimensions full scale on paper, and then this is what the base is going to look like, 2 inches thick with a pedestal on it. So now what I've done is I've taped all the pieces with the outside edge down and the taper I want all together, kind of squeezing them together with the tape. Next I'll take a piece of tape and go across the whole thing to kind of make it a little bit more secure, and then it should roll right up and be all oriented correct. Alright, now let's see if this thing will come together. What I've done is I've taken some tape and gone across the joints just to hold it together while I try and stand it up and get it to the angles to go together. Now it should just all slide right together here, and that looks great. Everything lines up just nicely. That top angle, that last angle looks great. Just going to take a piece of tape and wrap it right there. That'll all come together once it gets clamped. So the next step is to lay it out flat the other way so that the glue joints are up. Put glue down each one of the joints, roll it up, and then clamp it around the top, middle, and bottom to hold it together while it dries. Alright, I'm ready to do the glue up. So what I've done is I've opened this up with the inside in, and all the angles are up now. So I'm ready to put the glue on. I've got some tape pieces all made up to tape the seam shut when I get it shut. I've got a bucket of water and a rag to clean up all the excess glue to squeeze out. I also have these little pieces of window shrink wrap, which I'll put around the unit and then use a hairdryer and heat them up, and they'll shrink up to the piece of wood, and then I can wrap the string around it, and the string won't get caught on the glue and it won't get stuck to the piece. So I'm ready to start. Alright, here we go with the glue up using tight bond, and I'm just going to go across the seams and use my spreader and spread it out as I put it on. And I'll probably have to go back and put a little more on when I'm done, but this will give me a good start. Alright, looks like I've got everything covered well. And we're going to roll it up. These seams. And there you have it. We're done. We're glued up. Here's the final look at the pedestal. All glued up. It's really pretty cherry. Came out beautifully. All the angles came out nicely. And I'm really pleased with it.